So I'm Zachary. I'm a Melbourne boy, but I'm also a Gundjamara man from Victoria, and also a Palawa man from Tasmania, and also adopted into the Yolngu culture, which is Northeast Arnhem Land. So my life started when I was 12 years of age, and everyone is probably looking around saying, well, how did your life start at 12 years of age when, you know, July the 12th, 1989 was when you were born? My life started when I was 12 years of age is because that was the day that I found out that I was Aboriginal. It was the day that changed my life forever. So it happened one night when my father got a call from my grandmother, and she said, Peter, you have to come down to your brother's house because we've got some news to tell you. So we went off to the country, and I remember walking into my uncle's house, and I kind of said to myself, you know, like, I wasn't expecting anything as a 12-year-old. I was naive to the whole situation, what was going on. Dad didn't tell me what was going on. My uncle never told me what was going on. I walked around the corner of my uncle's house, and I saw a black woman. It was the first time I ever seen a black woman in my life. As a 12-year-old, I lived a very, very sheltered life. I walked around the corner and I saw a black woman, and I walked over her, and my mum and dad's always instilled into me that you need to respect people. Doesn't matter what colour they are, doesn't matter what religion they believe in, they're still human beings. So I went over to my auntie. So I went over and introduced myself, and I said, hello, I'm Zach, and she said, hello Zach, I'm your auntie Elsie. And I was like, oh, okay, yep, no worries. And being a 12-year-old, all I wanted to do was play with my big cousins outside. But I knew my dad was quite serious on this night, and he said, no Zach, you need to come sit down. So I sat down, and then my auntie started rattling off names that I've never heard of in my life. And she was saying, these are your uncles and your aunties, and your great-grandmothers and your great-grandfathers. And I said, okay. And she said, Zach, I've got something to tell you. And I was like, okay. And she's like, you're Aboriginal. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And that's what I said. But being 12, and the media also still played a part when it came to writing about Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people. So what I knew at 12-year-old, that Aboriginal people were all related. Aboriginal people didn't have jobs. Aboriginal people were all drunks. And that's what I knew about Aboriginal people. And it was the year where, obviously, Cathy Freeman was massive in Australia. I was like, oh, cool. And then I asked my auntie, because what I heard was all Aboriginal people were related. So I said to my auntie, I said, am I related to Cathy Freeman? And she's like, no. I was like, oh, damn. So that's when my life started. At 12 years of age, I was just about to enter high school. Now, high school was a massive thing back in, you know, still is today, but I was going to a high school where my friends weren't going. All my friends went to a different high school, so I was out of my comfort zone. So I went to this high school on the first day. The teacher, you know, I was in class and said hello to everyone, and everyone was a bit awkward because no one knew each other. So they're like, oh, hi, how are you? Yeah, that's good. And we sat down. And this is when my life changed forever. I sat down, and the teacher went around and said, like, you know, introduce yourself, and say who you are, what you like, and what's your background. So it came to me, and I was like, thinking in my head, what do I say, what do I say, what do I say, what do I say? So I said, oh yeah, I'm Zach, I like football, I like music, and because it was an all-boys school, I was like, oh yeah, I like girls too. And then she said, what's your heritage? I was like, oh, I'm Aboriginal. Every kid in that room looked at me like I was a different person. The bell rang, and I was like, oh, you know, went out, and no one wanted to talk to me. I walked around school for the rest of the day not talking to anyone. The next day, that's when things started to get worse. At 12 years of age, looking back now, I truly found out what racism was all about. The words that were used towards me is things that I would never, ever, ever say to people that I know now. The word coon, the word boom, or the statement you're a petrol sniffer, or the statement that, you're only coming to this private school because the government's paying. That happened for 2 years straight, in consecutive days. I remember one day, in my first year of high school in year 7, I was getting, chased by some people that were teasing me. They caught me, and they started beating me up, and they said, shouldn't you be fast because you're black? Year 8 came, I never mentioned that I was Aboriginal ever again. In those 2 years, I attempted suicide 5 times because I didn't want to know that I was Aboriginal. Year 8 came, that was an alright year. People started to leave me alone, but there was still that constant harassment. My grades were slipping, reports were coming home, and because my mum and dad took a second mortgage out, I was hiding those reports. And then one day mum found a report and she's like, what are all these Fs? What are all these Ds? So then that's when I became really insecure in myself and I started lying. I started saying, oh no, I think they've got the different Zachary. There was no other Zachary at the school, it was just me. At the end of year 8 I said, Mum, I don't want to go to that school anymore. And she said, why? That moment in time I could have told her the truth, but I didn't. I said, oh no, I want to go to a girls' school, boy and girls' school. I think I work better when girls are around. And she's like, oh yeah, you're at that age, I guess. And I was like, yeah, girls always make me work, I get on better with girls, And she's like, yeah, I feel you do too. So I went to a public school. And I thought, I could be myself. I said I was Aboriginal. Same thing happened. For 2 years again, I never said I was Aboriginal. And then I left that school because I actually got expelled. So I was on MSN Messenger, and this was the night before I got expelled. And I remember group chats. Yes, group chats were back in MSN Messenger, not just Facebook, kids. And I was on MSN Messenger, and this girl that I thought I liked, and I thought she liked me too, made a group, and then invited someone else in that actually bullied me. And I was like, oh, hey, how are you, mate? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Then he started calling me, oh, are you a faggot? Are you a poofter? He said, stand up for yourself and do something, make sure people don't bully you. So the next day I brought a knife to school. I didn't do anything with it. I just wanted to scare him. That first period rang and, I was sitting in the front row, he was sitting in the back, and he's like, oh, so did you bring anything, you poofter? And I was like, yeah, and I showed him and I had a little pocket knife. It was blunt as, so it wouldn't have hurt anyone. So the next thing is, I know he's walking off to the principal's office. I see my moment of time, so I run to the portable and chuck the knife under the portable. The next period, knock, 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 Vice Principal, Mr. Green, come to the principal's office. And then I sat down in the principal's office, I rang my mum up. My mum came to the office and the principal was like, we found, Zach just showed us where he put the knife. And Mum's like, what, knife? And then I started crying, just burst out into tears. And Mum's like, what's going on? I said, oh, they've been really mean to me. They started calling me all those names because I was Aboriginal and everything. That boy who bullied me for that amount of time since I was out of that school for 2 years got 3 days suspension, I got expelled. So I left that school and moved up to the country, Mansfield, Victoria, Mount Buller, and that's when I truly started to find myself. I never said I was Aboriginal again until I was 17 years of age. 17 years of age, and I walked into a warehouse in Melbourne, in the factory, with hundreds of school kids like you guys. And I walked in and I met one of my childhood idols, which was Jim Steins. And Jim runs these heroes days for young kids, you know, to get out of your comfort zone. And I remember Jim meeting me at the start and saying, hey, how are you? And I said, yeah, good mate. In an Irish accent he said it, so I can't say it, I can't do Irish. He said, hey, how are you? And I said, yeah, good, Jimmy. And he said, oh, who do you barrack for? And I was like, oh, the Melbourne Football Club. And he's like, you know I played for Melbourne. I was like, yeah, duh. Next thing you know, we're in this room full of 100 kids, right? And he picks me out of the crowd. And it's probably something to do with he met me and he knew I barracked for Melbourne Football Club and all that. And he got me on stage. And he started asking me who I am and started digging into my life. And he goes, and I just started one-word answers. Oh, yep, or a couple of word answers. Oh, yeah, Zach, blah, 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 yeah. He said, what are you hiding? And I said, nothing. He said, what are you hiding? And I said, nothing. And he kept on saying it for 5 times, and I said nothing. And then on the 6th time, he goes, what are you hiding? I went, bang, started crying. Like a teenager that's just broken up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, that was me. I started crying my heart out. And he said, what's wrong? I said, oh, I'm ashamed. And he said, what are you ashamed of? I said, I'm ashamed of being an Aboriginal person. He looked at me in the eye and he said, Zach, I'll give you one piece of advice. It doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter what religion you believe in, be true to yourself. Be true to who you are, and you'll go on doing what you need to do in life. From that day on, from 17, I've been a proud Aboriginal man ever since. And at 17, that's when I truly found my calling, which was being a chef. I left school at year 11, and cooking was my escape from my whole world. Cooking was that one thing that took me somewhere or into a place, to a point in time where I could just be myself. So from 17 to 21, I completed my apprenticeship. And then at 21, I got a bit sick of doing my apprenticeship, finished my apprenticeship, got sick of being a chef for a little while because I was exhausted. Long hours, everything. So I went into youth work because I love what Jim did. And I remember when I went into youth work, it was like this world had opened up for me. I met family in Melbourne that I'd never ever met before in my life. So I was connecting with my cousins, my uncles, my aunties. Then I found a sense of belonging. At 26 years of age, I met my partner, who may I say, is also, she's actually on TV. Her name's Layla Gurrawiri from the Margaret Footy Show. She's a young woman. When I met her, I was a bit lost in life. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I knew I was a chef, but I was doing other things because I was exhausted from the long hours. So I met Layla in a bar, and then we never spoke for another year because apparently I chewed her ear off in a bar and she didn't want to bar with me. And then the next year I met her again, and then 26 came and we finally got together, and then 6 months later we found out we were having a baby. That changed me. I went back to cooking, wanted to be a chef again because of my babies. And then because it was such long hours into the pregnancy that I decided, I was like, well, maybe I need to be there for my child and not just be a chef. So I packed up my knives from a restaurant that I was working in Melbourne, and I went in to work as an Aboriginal liaison officer in the hospitals. When you find out you're going to be the father for the first time, your whole life changes. That protective instinct just goes bang. It comes straight into your mind. So I knew I was going to be a father. So I was working at the hospitals. And on one night, right, me and Layla were sitting down watching TV, and we're talking about, we just had our ultrasound, 16 weeks. We went to bed like any ordinary couple would do, excited about, you know, a baby in the next coming months. 2 o'clock in the morning, Layla feels some sharp pains. Ambulance comes, and we go to the hospital, and we find out that we've lost our son, Elijah. And it was a very, very big moment in my life because I didn't know, I've never lost anyone in my life. Layla was in hospital for 10 days because she got a blood infection into her veins and she nearly died. She got out of hospital and we cremated Elijah and we spread his ashes in Mansfield, where I also grew up, and then also on Elcho Island in November. He was born on June the 21st, 2015, and then November we cremated him. December, a Christmas miracle came. We found out Layla was pregnant again. 2 pregnancies in a fucking year, no way. Layla was crying. She's like, I don't know why this has happened. I'm pregnant again. I'm like, it's a good Christmas miracle. And me, I usually take to Facebook and I'm like, yes. So I wrote a status, yes, a fucking Christmas miracle has fucking happened. Thank God. Christmas Day, Layla felt pains again. We took her to hospital and we found out she was having an ectopic pregnancy. The next day, she had to get surgery on Boxing Day and we lost another little baby. And then that's where everything started. And this is why I'm up here. So right now, I'm an Indigenous chef. I call myself an Indigenous chef for a reason. It's because I feel here in Australia right now that we don't celebrate the Indigenous culture through food like we do with every other culture. This year I've been doing pop-up restaurants around Darwin, one at Oak, one at East Point, and also one at Spice Garden, which is a new Sri Lankan restaurant, and they've all sold out. I wouldn't even thought 12 months ago, 18 months ago, I'd be up here in Darwin about to open my own restaurant next year, which is called Elijah's. But then fast forward, last September, we lost another little boy, Zane. So 3 babies in 18 months is massive. So right now what I'm doing, being a chef, is for my sons. Being Yungal and being Koori, I believe that if you celebrate Indigenous culture through food, it's another way forward for reconciliation.